Hello, I'm back with another video, and in this one I wanted to come forward with some inspiration that landed on me, and also maybe put further clarification to a video that I made previously. And I had made a video about talking about reclaiming innocence. And in that video, I put forward that I think that one of the the greatest things that we can do as human beings, for both learning but also for healing, is to fully experience things, to have total experiences, and whatever that means to a person. But I think somehow when I conveyed that in the other video, there wasn't the ensuing emphasis on joy. And I think more and more, even if we think in terms of living a decent, just life, I think it still amounts to joy, and I'm gonna try and go into that a little bit in this video. But I think so. One thing I wanted to start with is I think sometimes people don't really appreciate the scope of understanding of many, both criminals and police officers. I think maybe police officers and criminals are a similar player within society, and maybe operate in similar ways, and are maybe just simply working, are maybe on a spectrum of maybe service and detriment to a community. And I think that one can say that a police officer can both be of service but potentially also a detriment to a community, and a deviant can also be of service and of detriment to a community, such as like maybe some of the iconic gangster type figures in different periods, who had a bent for bestowing benefits on a community, or maybe regulating a community. They say in a work setting, I read a book, I can't quote the source, but that there's an official and a de facto power structure in any job setting, which is that you have the power structure and the official rank, but then you also have both the competence and the influence of other members at the job, that function almost like as a counterbalance to the official power structure, and is actually as vital as the de facto power structure, is as vital and as powerful in a work setting, if we're being honest. And I think that maybe criminals and police officers are a similar regulating factor within society, that is both the official recognized power that's above the surface, and then the underlying de facto power that can do certain things that the official above ground recognized power structure cannot. And so I want to say that, and if you look at a lot of deviant people, or maybe even like rebels in other contexts, a lot of them are actually quite conservative. If you really listen to their thoughts and how they approach things, a lot of deviants can actually be quite conservative, notwithstanding their willingness to go above and beyond the law. But I only wanted to reference that because I spend a lot of time like on the road driving, and I think that some of the maybe some of the most prudent and even excellent drivers would be both police officers and criminals. Sometimes I can just observe the way that a vehicle is driving, and a lot of times I can grasp if they may be armed or have substances on them, just by the way that they're driving. Sometimes a person who may be armed or have something that they don't want to be discovered is going to drive more careful, but in a certain way more potent. It's kind of like a prowling type of behavior where they're both aimless and active at the same time. And I think that you become what you are against. So in a certain way, police are very similar, and they have a unique style of driving, both in a slow sense, but also in an active, fast sense that is related to driving aimlessly yet actively. And I said that to say that this is a little bit tied into my video, but that, and I don't want to trivialize or promote either of those professions, just with the amount of pain and suffering that both of those groups can inflict, but also not disrespecting anyone, because we all have the circumstances that make us who we are, and we all form a part of the ecosystem. And there's really only one judge, and that is the eye of justice, which is not a respecter of person, and is simply the unfolding of cause and effect. And I think through cause and effect, we all answer for ourselves one day. And but what I meant to say is that if you've ever had the experience of riding in a vehicle with a police officer, but maybe probably better yet, and not in a compromised position, but like if you got to ride in the front seat with the police officer, where you're not being reprimanded, but you actually have the opportunity to ride with a police officer. And now I'm not trying to make that sound like I'm involved with, like I'm involved with the police, but I had when I was growing up, I grew up in the United States, but we had a family friend that had migrated from Africa and worked in the medical field in the United States, but was a former police officer in Africa, and I think an effective one too. And if you spend time with the police officer, it's interesting because they have a manner and approach to life that is really unique from the ordinary person. They understand they understand how potent a mundane location or experience can be. They understand how really life and death can emerge at any moment, and how they understand the significance of ordinary circumstances, what may be happening that is very ordinary but very potent at the same time. They understand cues differently, and they understand leverage. They understand all forms of leverage, and then they understand socializing differently. They can conceal what their intentions are, and socialize in a very, I would say they have maybe extraordinary social skills that do not reveal their intentions, and they can play on another person's psychology quite well, while maintaining a friendly, lighthearted, aloof banter. They I would say that they're probably excellent drivers, and they have a sense, they probably could, if they drive through a community, they can understand both the dangers and the lucrative potential of different establishments and people on the street. I think they would probably have a good gauge of how much power another person has, or another group or establishment has, and what that can mean, and how that can play out. These are some of the things that I sensed growing up around, and sometimes getting rides home. My best friend growing up, his father was a former police officer, and so I had some experiences riding with him, and these are the different things that I sensed as a child, but I couldn't lay a finger on it and articulate it as a child. But what I wanted to say is that riding with this former police officer was very it was, in a certain way, it was very graceful. The man had a form of maturity that was that I think we can really learn from a lot. Where now he had like a very if you can imagine if you can imagine like riding in a car with someone that is with like a very now it wasn't like a lavish car, but just like a very well kept nice car, while it's freezing cold outside but you're warm inside the car. The car is efficient, comfortable, and it's taking you anywhere you want to go. So it's very potent and powerful, but it's also a little bit effeminate and free flowing. And so what I wanted to say that is that that's kind of some of my understanding of uh of power and maturity. And where I wanted to go with that is to say, and what I wanted to go with the greater message of this video is that, when you're riding with someone like that, your experience with that person is, now it's very free because they can take you anywhere, they can do anything. They have the well kept car, and they also have your life in their hand driving the car, and but yet they're being kind to you, and they're showing you a good time. So in a certain way, it's very free, and the potential is wide open for anything that anywhere they could take you, and anywhere anything they could do for you. But in a certain sense, it's also almost like scripted, where they're doing the exact appropriate thing. And so it's the situation is unfolding almost as though it had been scripted. And I want to say like that scriptedness is kind of unique. Like if you can imagine, another example is like if you were to observe like maybe someone who is of a great vintage and maturity, like a person who has experienced a lot of life, like maybe a grandparent, and you see them in a location like maybe like a park with children. Now a park is very there's a park is very free, and it's one of the places where we can experience a degree of freedom. And I think that's what's enjoyable for children. The YouTuber King Noble, he has a video expressing some of the profundity of play, and he points out the brilliance of the juxtaposition of freedom and challenge that a child or a person experiences at a playground, where it is very open and free, but it's also challenging in some ways. Like you have like different obstacles and stuff like that, and that dichotomy is a very beautiful experience for a child and maybe any person. But if you're in such a place and then you see like maybe a mature adult, like a grandparent, you can really taste the vintage of that older person if you observe them in juxtaposition to the children, where maybe the older person is walking with their hand behind their back, and what they're in a free environment where they could do almost anything, yet they're very reserved and almost as if they were following a script, and they're really not doing anything superfluous or like what would look like silly, and so it's kind of scripted in that way. And then I want to say like another example of that is if you've ever seen like people who are really who have a real chemistry as lovers, there's also something a little bit scripted about it, to where I think like if I can imagine like a really healthy maybe sexy dynamic between a man and a woman, it's almost like the woman is very helpful. I think women are helpful by nature, and that includes at all levels of the courting, like whether the way that she dresses to make herself appear appealing to a man of a particular grade. Like I think many nuances in the way that a woman subconsciously presents herself, it helps a certain type of a certain caliber of person recognize her and gravitate to her. But then going beyond that in the interaction, I think many times a woman subtly, maybe subconsciously, sets a person that she is really interested in and attracted to up for success in different ways, to where that person becomes funnier. That person has an opportunity to say interesting things as a consequence of the dynamic between them, to where it's almost like the woman is setting up bowling pins, and the skill of the man is simply knocking them down. And if he has skill, it's not too difficult to knock the bowling balls down. They're right there in front of him. But what I wanted to say is that in that dynamic, somehow, and if you can, for some reason I find myself referencing adult films a lot, and I don't mean to do that in a distasteful way, but sometimes if you've watched like a older adult film, like you can see that they have a very like scripted dialogue that's almost like blatantly scripted, but somehow it's a little bit almost devilish and sexy in the scripted nature of it. So there's something about following a script that can be almost creative in a strange sense. And I want to say that maybe that is a way that we can actually experience life and also be more just and congruent people, is though to imagine as though our life had been scripted and we are in a play, and all we need to do is walk out that play to be upright. And actually, as the most efficient and enjoyable way of experiencing the experience and the play, so to speak, is simply to follow the script. Nothing more, nothing less. That simple as the most mature and upright thing that we can do. You know, I don't want to get off into the weeds referencing religious dogma or holy names, but I think objectively speaking, we can recognize that there are many profound, powerful currents that surround us and facilitate our existence, that are very potent and subtle at the same time. An example of that would be like a river current, where you look at a river and you can tell that there's a current, but by looking at it, you could never imagine just how powerful and profound that current of the river is. But it is there, and it is very subtle. You know, we talk about the pull and the orchestration of the planets and the heavenly bodies as gravitation, but I think maybe a more concise way would simply be to say currents, as though the reality we inhabit is founded in and regulated by different currents that are both manifest and subtle, such as the revolution of day and night. And these currents facilitate and guide us in making life possible. And I would say that overall, these currents are in our favor and are giving us the opportunity to exist. And so I meant to say as much as that all of these currents that foster our life, what I think they amount to is for us to experience joy ultimately. And I think that that the most life producing, life affirming, life respecting, and enjoyable aspect of life is to simply follow the script and experience joy. You know, I was thinking like, what would it, you know, sometimes I'm gonna, this is the only time I want to reference a holy name, but you know, they say like a lot of us, they use the term child of God, and also that we will not enter paradise until we can adopt the stance of and the disposition of a child, being childlike. The order Osho puts forward the distinction between being childish and childlike. But I think all of us have it in our potential and prerogative to be childlike and simple, kind, and innocent, even as adults. And I think that my one image that I want to portray is like, what would it mean to be a truly right standing child? And I think that maybe the most probably the most innocent and also inspirational stance for us as adults would be to imagine being in that car as a child, with this very powerful person driving the car that could take us anywhere that they want, but they're acting in our best interest and they're taking us to get a Happy Meal. And all we have to do is follow the script and enjoy that Happy Meal. And I think that that's a lot of the way that I would like to frame my own life as an approach, in just saying that we have many different currents around us. And the most effective thing we can do in this situation is simply to abide within them and enjoy them in following the script. But then, of course, also making prudent decisions and respecting ourselves and other people. But just to follow the script and experience joy as the most mature and effective and enjoyable way of going through life. So I hope this can be inspirational, and just some insights that was on my heart. Peace.